Like the video, hype the video, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and subscribe to the channel. That would mean so much to me. Here we have Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark on the bench yelling at each other. Talking about some defensive nonsense. My hands are straight up. I'm going straight up. Hey, you, sit down, take your seat. Caitlin, get your ass up. Caitlin shaking her head. Nope. This coach is an idiot. Nope. This coach is a dumbass. Nope. This coach is foolish. Nope.
There is a moment in sports, a quiet, almost invisible moment that nobody talks about, but every great athlete has lived through it. It's not the injury. It's not the loss. It's the moment you look across the bench and realize the person holding the clipboard doesn't actually want you to win. And what makes this story so disturbing, so uncomfortably fascinating, is that we are watching that moment happen right now, in real time, on camera, in front of millions of people, and somehow, most of the world is still missing it. Pay close attention to what happened inside that arena, because once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it, and the implications reach far beyond basketball. So, let's go back to the beginning, because this story didn't start with a sideline explosion. It started long before the cameras were ever rolling, and the seeds of everything we're witnessing right now were planted in a place nobody thought to look. Picture this. A franchise that hadn't mattered in years. A fan base that had given up hoping. Then one player walks through the door and overnight transforms the entire economic landscape of a league. Sellout crowds. National television. Global sponsors. A cultural moment that sports analysts couldn't fully explain because they had never seen anything quite like it before. And at the center of all of it stood one woman with a basketball and a calm, almost eerie confidence. Now here is where it gets interesting. Because in most sports stories, the arrival of a transformational player is celebrated. The coach embraces the gift. The organization builds around it. The whole machine pivots toward protecting that asset at all costs. That is the normal story. What happened in Indiana is the complete opposite of the normal story, and that is precisely why you need to hear every detail of what's unfolding right now. Let's talk about what was caught on camera, because the footage that has people talking isn't just a heated exchange. Heated exchanges happen in sports. Coaches and players bump heads. That is the nature of competition at the highest level. But there is a specific energy to what was filmed on that Indiana Fever sideline that separates it entirely from normal competitive tension, and if you slow it down and really study it, something deeply unsettling emerges. Watch the body language. Watch the posture. Watch the jaw. There's a particular kind of aggression that comes not from a desire to correct, but from a desire to dominate. And what the cameras captured during that sideline confrontation reads far less like coaching and far more like something personal being acted out in public. The exchange was about defensive rotations, specifically about hand positioning on a play. And Caitlin Clark, composed, measured, almost disturbingly calm, was explaining her decision. Hands straight up. Going straight up. Clean defense, by the book. And instead of that explanation being received as what it was, a player communicating, a player engaging, it was met with the kind of response that makes the people watching from the outside go quiet. Because suddenly, this isn't about basketball anymore. And everyone in that building could feel it. Now here's the first thing that should stop you cold. In a league where the average head coach has enormous institutional power over a player's minutes, reputation, and future, what kind of player looks their coach directly in the eye during a sideline confrontation and calmly holds their ground? What kind of player, under those circumstances, doesn't flinch? The answer is a player who has been in that situation enough times to know that backing down doesn't make it better. That right there should tell you everything about how long this tension has been building beneath the surface, because that level of composure doesn't come from one bad game. That composure is practiced. That composure is survival. And now let's talk about the comparison that certain media voices have been reaching for, because it has been frustrating to watch people drag out the Belichick and Brady dynamic as if it's even remotely applicable here. Let's be absolutely precise about why that comparison collapses the second you examine it. Bill Belichick came into that relationship with 6 Super Bowl rings and a defensive philosophy that had already rewritten NFL history. His authority wasn't manufactured. It wasn't emotional. It was built on an undeniable foundation of results, and every single player in that locker room knew it. More importantly, nobody in the history of the New England dynasty ever questioned whether Belichick believed in Brady. The friction between them was never about jealousy. It was two obsessive winners colliding over how to win more. That is a completely different universe from what is happening in Indiana, and conflating the two doesn't just miss the point, it actively obscures something important. Because the question at the center of the Indiana situation is not how to win more. It's whether winning is even the actual goal. And that is a dark, uncomfortable question to sit with. Let's look at the numbers, because numbers don't have an agenda. When Caitlin Clark is on the floor, this team is a different organism. The floor spacing opens. The defense has to account for her from half court. The entire offensive architecture of the game shifts in Indiana's favor. These are not opinions. These are documented, measurable outcomes that any competent analytics department can verify in an afternoon. And yet, and this is the part that makes no logical sense, there are credible reports suggesting that Stephanie White has told people inside and outside the organization that this team plays better without Caitlin Clark running the point. She reportedly believes Raven Johnson as a starter creates a faster, more defensively sound unit. Let that land for a second. Because either that belief is based on something so deeply private and strategically sophisticated that no outside observer can access it, which is possible, but requires extraordinary evidence, or it represents something far more troubling. A head coach who has let something personal cloud her professional judgment to the point where she can look at a historically transformational player and genuinely see a liability. And before anyone accuses this of being unfair speculation, let's look at what happened the very next possession after Caitlin Clark was pulled from the game for a defensive mistake. Because this is where the story takes its sharpest turn. The player brought in as the defensive replacement, the specific justification for benching a generational talent mid-game, proceeded to commit turnovers, blow defensive assignments, and fall out of the basketball game in just 10 minutes of playing time. 10 minutes. And the sideline reaction from Stephanie White to this collapse? Silence. No clipboard. No confrontation. No aggressive body language. Nothing. And if you are a person who takes intellectual honesty seriously, you have to stop and deal with that contrast, because it is the most revealing data point in this entire story. It proves, not suggests, proves, that the accountability being applied in that Indiana locker room is not uniform. It is selective. And the selection is not random. The only player being publicly humiliated, being screamed at in front of a national audience, being benched for mistakes that other players are committing without consequence, is Caitlin Clark. And now the question shifts from basketball to psychology. Because this is no longer a story about rotations. This is a story about what happens when the wrong person is given power over the right player at the wrong time. Let's talk about Stephanie White's career, because context matters enormously here. She was Miss Indiana basketball in high school, a title with genuine prestige in that state. She went on to a professional career that, by any reasonable assessment, never matched the ceiling those early accolades suggested. She played. She coached. She never broke through to the level that defines legacy. She never became the name that gets spoken in rooms that matter. And then, through the machinery of professional sports administration, she found herself standing on a sideline next to a player who, by her mid-20s, had already done more for women's basketball than most people do in their entire careers. Think about what that moment must feel like from the inside. Think about the psychological architecture of a person who spent their life in the sport, who sacrificed and competed and never quite arrived, suddenly holding power over someone who arrived so completely and so explosively that the entire landscape of the sport changed the moment she showed up. This is not an excuse. This is not a defense. This is an explanation of something deeply human and deeply dangerous. What happens when unresolved personal failure is given institutional authority? Because the damage here is real. This franchise, which should be one of the most exciting stories in sports right now, is sitting at 4-4 and stagnant. An expansion team just dropped 100 points on them. The locker room, and this detail is critical, is reportedly divided. And not divided in the way that competitive teams are sometimes divided by ambition or strategy. Divided in the most corrosive way possible. Half the roster apparently believes their own coach would rather win games without their best player on the floor. When that becomes the operating belief of even a fraction of a team, the trust required for championship-level performance is already gone. You cannot manufacture chemistry in an environment where the fundamental question of what we are here to accomplish is fractured.